Welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses. Calum will be joining this episode later, don't worry about that. Unfortunately, he didn't make it into the game last night, so has decided to sit out the review of the Qarabag game. Joining me to discuss all things Qarabag and go through our transfer talk is Fraser Wallace. Those of you that have tuned into our Scotland episodes will remember him from them. And Erin Grieve, former guest of the show and regular pundit on the Scottish Football Forum podcast, has also taken the time to join me to discuss the events of last night's disappointing defeat. So near, but yet so far, an Aberdeen fall once at the final hurdle on their hopes for reaching the group stages of the Europa Conference League. It wasn't to be on the 150th appearance in Europe. A 3-1 defeat on the night saw us crash out 4-1 on aggregate. In Erin, what was quite a disappointing performance overall.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, pre the game, realistically, I think the 1-0 last week probably flattered us a bit. And to be honest, our chances of having got through that tie weren't, I wouldn't say they were particularly strong. But you've got the hope and you can at least think, well, we've got a decent enough squad. The team looked good. No real kind of shocks there. And I think we just didn't really turn up. First half, we were actually not bad. And I think if you're 2-0 down at half time, we came out worse in the second half.
Yeah, well, obviously 3-0 on the tie, down at halftime, 2-0 on the night. But Fraser, in that first leg, as Erin touches on, 1-0 probably flattered us over in Baku, and there was a level of confidence amongst the support going into bringing that back to Pittodrie. But we saw signs of how technically good they were, and that was my fear as kickoff approached. The pitch was in excellent condition, and just how much Qarabag could pass the ball about. And boy, did they exploit that throughout the first half.
Yeah, definitely. I think you saw all their experience of these ties last night, getting through that final round of playoffs, which they've done quite a few times over recent years. They were just frankly better than us. It was a bit like the Rijeka game a couple of years ago, where you turned up with a little bit of hoping against expectation, and it was just blown away in 20 minutes by a much better team, simply put. No problem with that.
Yeah, and I suppose, when we looked at the starting lineup, it was an unchanged team really from Sunday's 1-1 draw at Tynecastle with Jack McKenzie coming in for Conor McLennan, which was probably one of the expected changes. Personally, I was still surprised to see Terry Jenks remain in the starting lineup, because I thought we might have gone two up top with Jet and Ramirez. Erin, were you surprised to see Jet remain on the bench?
Not really. I mean, I think the first European game, he was really good. And I thought, it's actually a really good signing. This looks really positive. That game was brilliant. Since then, I said to my dad at the United game, I said, he's got Sam Cosgrove vibes. And my dad said, don't be ridiculous. And then about 2 weeks later, so a couple of games later, my dad was like, yeah, he maybe does. I just think there was a lot of him standing about, not doing things. The Wraith game, the Libby game actually was, I think, the one where people just stopped passing to him, because every time he got the ball, it went to one of their players. And I actually think he had one of his best games when he came on Sunday from the bench.
Yeah.
And if you've got someone who can come on at half time when you potentially need them to, and we did need him to, and play well, that's really important. Pleased to see Jack McKenzie back. Him and Calvin Ramsey are brilliant. Is Conor McLennan injured?
Yeah, I think he did his calf or hamstring on Sunday at Tynecastle. So I don't think that we've found out the extent of that. But obviously without Jet linking up with Ramirez, we kind of looked a bit lost in our final third. But Fraser, we saw just how clinical a team like Qarabag can be. Unfortunately, we gave Bayramanov a bit too much space, and Zubair, the former Highby, played in an excellent ball for him to slam past Joe Lewis. And it's not really the start you want after 8 minutes when you probably want the first goal to find yourselves 1-0 down.
Yeah, exactly. To be honest, Zubair, a bit like the French James Collins, leaves Hibs, suddenly gets better. I mean, something about Easter Road being a black hole for talented players. That'll be one for Michael. I'm sure he'll love that when he's listening in. But yeah, to be honest, Qarabag just read us really, really well. And you could see the way they were attacking first half in particular. The wide defenders for them just stopped our fullbacks going forward, and then you could see Zubir and the other wide man for them. They weren't attacking out wide; they were going inside the fullbacks and trying to expose McCrory and Gallagher, which they did time after time. They were left 1-on-1, and Gallagher and McCrory just didn't have the intelligence or the pace to deal with them. And the third goal as well was another example of that. Just going at Gallagher, committing him, and making things happen. You could see that they'd done their homework from last week, and they'd watched us, and they saw that our central defence was the weak spot in our team, and they just exploited that time and time again. I mean, the first half, we were lucky to get away at 2-0 because it really should have been 3-4. Could have been anything. But it kind of highlights a wee bit of concern for me in the centre of defence, which we can maybe touch on later.
Yeah, and the fact that, Qarabag could pick up that in a week, that's our weakness. But, we seem to still be concerned or confident, that that's not a place of issue and we're going to carry as is, although we're going to come on to transfer targets later on in the show. And that's when we'll maybe discuss that particular area. It's just really concerning that we didn't kind of pick up on any of the warning signs that early goal provided. But what I did pick up on, and you touched on it there, Fraser, was just how well Qarabag continued to press, especially our young fullbacks. They doubled up every time on McKenzie and Ramsey and just stifled us. And, at times in Baku, when we were playing it along the back, you're just like, oh, here's a mistake, it's a way it come, it's a way it come. And I think from that moment, we just didn't look comfortable at all.
No, you're right. It was a really clinical display by them, and in terms of their tactics, you could see they were pressing high up. They gave our defensive midfielders and Brown and Ferguson absolutely no room at all on the ball, and there was at least twice I can remember, possibly even more, where Brown was being pressed, didn't have any options, and ended up losing the ball, and they're going at our centre halves again. It was what happens to Scottish teams in Europe, in particular the smaller Scottish teams. Our managers generally just get tactically outdone. Yeah. And it's time after time. It's, and I hear a lot of, there's a better quality of players. To an extent, there is a reasonable technical quality, but more often than not, it's tight. And you just get, it's just tactically, the management is just a bit more switched on. And that happens so many times.
Yeah, and Stephen Glass has been quite tactically aware in his opening fixtures this season on being able to change it. But I really don't know what he could have done to change things last night in that opening 20 minutes when it just seemed it was wave after wave of attack from the Azerbaijanis. And, we were really lucky not to be 2-0 down very soon after when Caddy couldn't get his studs to the ball across the box, and what was really, if he did, that's 2-0, and at that point you think game over. But it was 2-0 very soon after. Unfortunately, a common occurrence this season in countless games, Ross McCrory slack with the ball, and I mean a really inexcusable poor pass when he can't find a teammate with that ball. And we're immediately on the back foot, and yet more silky skill from Zubir. A couple of 1-2s with Caddy, and the ball falls to Malinowski, who rifles it past Joe Lewis. And Erin, at that point, you're 2-0 down within inside 20 minutes. The tie's as well as done, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we needed to score 3 at that point, and to be honest, it wasn't even so much about whether they'd get another one or what. We were just running out of time. At half time, we go back out. Could we have scored 3 in the second half? Probably, but they looked like scoring another. 4-1 looks bad, but actually probably could have been a few more than that. I think they probably slowed it down a wee bit towards the end when they knew they were fine and through. I think Ross McCrory had a really bad night. Yeah. I'm not sure he's a left centre half. He's definitely right-footed, and I'm not sure he's comfortable there at all. And I presume that is a very temporary measure while Andy Considine's out, but it's still not.
It's not going to be temporary if we don't sign another centre back, because Considine's out till Christmas, so it's
Well, we surely are. I think we were anyway, and we're surely getting at least one now, if not potentially looking at getting two, because if McCrory got injured, I suppose we just had to move Ramsey and McKenzie and go to three at the back. Declan Gallagher, I think, is probably all right, but we are very short there, and McCrory looked probably one of his worst games I've seen him play. I think he's a really decent player, but just looked massive out of his depth last night.
Yeah, and I think the fact that the pace and willingness that Qarabag kept attacking us, and as Fraser said, they knew that was our weak point. He just looked so uncomfortable time and time again. And I left after the third goal because I'd had enough. Whether you want to question what type of fan that makes anybody, that's your choice. But it was a painful viewing experience. And Willie Miller said on BBC Sports Sound last night that if Aberdeen had lost 7 goals last night, they couldn't have had any complaints, because really, if Qarabag had a bit more, clinicalness about them, we could have quite easily conceded that number. And Erin, you touched on there a great point. We probably could have scored 3 goals, but at no point was I ever confident if we did score 3 that we wouldn't have conceded another goal.
Yeah, I think away goals rule being scrapped could have massively benefited us if we'd got to that kind of point, because if we'd scored 3, and we didn't really test their keeper much, but let's say we'd managed. In the first half, we were pushing up as best as we could, and there was chances. The first 10 minutes, I thought we looked, well, for 5 minutes maybe, I thought we looked all right. If we'd scored 3, they would have 100% sorted out and done something. They were not going to sit back. They're a very good side. They are. They're one of the better sides I think we played in Europe in a long time.
Technically, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose the only kind of hope was, will they struggle with their style of play on our pitch, given the state of theirs? But no, turns out they quite enjoyed our pitch.
Yeah, and I think Stephen Glass picked that up as well in his post-match conferencing. We're probably lucky it wasn't the other way around, as the tie would have been out of sight by the time of the second leg if they'd had a decent pitch to play on last week. So, maybe a blessing in disguise for us. It didn't really get much better in the second half. Erin, you touched on there about we didn't really force their keeper into any significant saves. Over the 2 legs, I only really remember him having to make one serious save, and that was from, I think it was Jet that had the shot that he kind of spilled in the second half, and I think it ended up going out for a corner. But, Fraser, Qarabag, once again, just showed that little bit of European experience that we are almost certainly lacking in comparison to them. I think you touched on there about, I think it's 8 seasons in a row they've made it to group stages now in European competitions. And once again, picked up on a loose ball 2 passes later, and a bit of dancing feet from Zubair flashing the ball past Joe Lewis. Maybe won't be happy getting beat at his near post, but again, questions around, for me, more questions around the defending of that goal rather than Joe Lewis.
Aye, definitely. To be honest, it was just a great strike, and any keeper would have struggled. They showed their European experience for sure. I think, touching on our attacking side last night, it really was a case of no Ryan Hedges, no creativity. And that has to be a concern, because that's what we saw last season. When Hedges and Wright went out, we just had nothing. And I know that we've tried to do a bit of recruitment over the summer, Jet and Ramirez is a change up front. But actually, if I'm honest, we can change our striking options all we want. The problem is behind the strikers, it's the final ball. It's just not there without Hedges. And sorry, on you go, Glen.
I was just saying, it doesn't matter who you've got up front. You've got to, deliver them a bit of service. And Ramirez is certainly a player that lacks that. I've seen people kind of picking up on, he wasn't very great last night. What does he offer? Well, you've seen what he's like when he actually gets the ball to his feet or gets the ball into the box. We weren't doing that last night.
So I think we then have to question the sensibility of still having Niall McGinn and Johnny Hayes both at the club. If they are seen as creative options, then they're just not producing. And at this point, we have to then question if that's a sensible use of our money. Now, it's a bit late in the transfer window with at time of recording 4 days to go. You're not going to change that. But we do have to be thinking about it for January and next summer, that this is an area which we haven't addressed, which the previous manager didn't address, and it's coming back to bite us again.
Yeah, we also like some Matty Kennedy, who's all rumoured to be on his way to St Mirren, another creative player that not seen anything of this season. Mm-hmm. We did get a late consolation in the form of a Lewis Ferguson penalty. Calvin Ramsey, still in the 90th minute, bombing into the box and drawing the foul. What I did like about that instance when I watched it back on Red TV was how determined Calvin Ramsey was to take the penalty. I think using a few expletives directed towards Lewis Ferguson when Ferguson stamped his authority on taking it instead.
Yeah, I have to say I quite like his attitude, Ramsey. But I'm definitely of the you put your best penalty taker on it.
I think at that point the tie's gone. I'd just let Calvin Ramsey take it. For me personally. So as I said, the European campaign ends in quite a disappointing fashion. But Erin, Stephen Glass came out at the end of the game to say, we were beaten by the better side, they had the better quality, can't really complain. Do you appreciate his honesty in his post-match press conference?
Yeah, I mean, he's right, isn't he? They are, one of the hardest sides we've had, I would say. They are technically decent. Is that what, their 7th, 8th year in a row qualifying? Mm-hmm. And it's often, that's the conference. It's often Champions League, Europa League. Yeah. They are a really solid side. To be honest, I think we would have been better off with Limassol. But, they are a good side. We did not do enough at all last night to get anywhere near. We can't really say, we were unlucky or just weren't good enough. And I think it is important that he comes out and is willing to say that, because one, if he's saying stuff like that, it suggests that he knows we need to look at bringing players in, and that we're not just going to accept what we were doing for the last few seasons, which was bringing in loan players for 6 months who didn't do anything and basically just looking for excuses at the end of every game.
No, totally.
The amount of times last season we heard, players are tired, they've had to travel, it's too hot, it's too cold, we're tired, someone's got a headache.
I appreciate that he didn't use excuses, which is like you said, is refreshing to say. And something that Fraser touched on about earlier in the episode there about, and Glass picked up on it, the way they played like the diamond and then used their fullbacks. They almost attacked with 6 players, so much so that we just couldn't adapt to it. We couldn't get out. And Erin, on Sunday at Tynecastle, we changed things up in the second half and we dominated the midfield. We didn't see that last night. We seemed to lose that midfield battle, a kind of problem that existed a lot last season.
It was the opposite last night, I think. You're 3-0 down in the tie, you're expecting, second half, we really need something. And actually the first half was better. If you were a neutral, the first half was a decent game to watch last night. Because
maybe not from an Aberdeen point of view, but yeah.
No, if you were, if that was just on the TV and you're a neutral fan, they were decent to watch. They were technically good.
True.
They were attacking. It was a pretty quick game. And actually, we weren't too bad in the first half. And we weren't good, but we were not good in the second half at all. And that is a bit worrying, because what we did at Tynecastle I thought was great. And now you think, is that a one-off? Because we really need to be able to come back from being 1-0 down, because we're going to concede all season 100%. Our defence is going to be poor.
Yeah.
And it's fine. I mean, it doesn't matter if you score, if you're scoring 4, it doesn't matter if you concede 3. And actually, clean sheet is great, and Joe Lewis's clean sheet bonuses are probably going to be non-existent. But I think, if we can score enough goals, it makes no difference. Livy, 94th minute winner, great, came back from 1-0 down again. Tynecastle, if we played another 10 minutes on Sunday, we'd have won that. We were looking really good. But the worry is that if we have games, that are going to be games of 2 halves, we need to be decent when we need to be decent, and not come out in the second half heads down and not looking like we had any ideas. It was as though we just didn't know what to do last night. And the worry, I suppose, is that if we do that this season and we have games with, teams like, we've got Celtic, Rangers, Hibs, Hearts, all kind of around the top. If we have games like that and we go 1-0 down and we just can't come back from it, it's been a long season.
Yeah, it is. And I suppose it's going to be kind of questions about Glass's experience as a manager. Do you think there was a bit of naivety, Fraser, last night in the way we approached the game, or was that just the experience that Qarabag showed was there instead?
I think you've kind of touched on both points. I think we were naive more to the occasion than Stephen Glass being naive. I just think we've not been there apart from Scott Brown. So as a team, we just don't know how to handle an occasion like that in Europe. Whereas you could see Qarabag just knew what they were doing, they turned up, they knew how to exploit us, and they did the business. So possibly, I wouldn't say it's naivety on Stephen Glass's part, more just a general sort of naivety around the club that we don't know how to handle an occasion like that. I think Erin touched on an interesting point about Glass and the game of two halves. We've seen that quite a bit this season, where we've got to half time and Glass has made changes because it's not working now. In one part, it's a positive because our previous manager didn't change things until it was too late. But on the other part, you do start to wonder, what is it that we're not getting right from the start, and where in the process is that failing? I mean, it's very early days, and I'm nitpicking there, but I think it's just one that we have to bear at the back of our minds and hope that Glass and the management team can develop throughout the season, is that ability to get it right from the start.
Yeah, I think I seen someone else raise that point on social media last night as well. There's been a lot of people like calling out performances of Johnny Hayes last night, whether you touched on it earlier, Fraser, about whether his legs are gone. For me, apart from his goal at Livingston, I'm still yet to see what Teddy Jenks offers to this Aberdeen side. And we're going to come on to the transfer talk. We've obviously signed Marley Watkins, and there's rumours of Matty Longstaff coming in from Newcastle. Erin, have you seen anything from Teddy Jenks yet to kind of understand what he brings to this team? And what about the criticism that Johnny Hayes has received about whether or not his legs are past it? Do you agree on that? Thoughts?
I liked Teddy Jenks at Livingston, I want to say, not just because he scored a goal, but he looked all right. I think he's okay. Maybe he's probably not going to be Player of the Year. He's probably not going to. But he might have a couple of good games and kind of break through. I suspect Marley Watkins might have a chance of pushing him out of the team. And if we're looking at other midfielders, I don't know how true this is going to be, but we seem to be signing about 9 players this weekend from what I've seen on Twitter. So there's a chance that he's going to end up kind of pushed out. I think he's okay. Johnny Hayes has been mixed. He's had the odd all right performance. A couple of his games though, was it Dundee? He just looks so past it, and it's a pity because I don't think he. I think he and McGinn have things to offer. McGinn's a weird one because Stephen Glass gave him that year. He wasn't stuck with him. He's not. He's inherited a team. It's difficult. He can't ship everyone out, but he gave McGinn a year, and twice really I've seen McGinn play was at Livingston and at Wraith, and traditionally McGinn wouldn't play on those pitches. We wouldn't need, we've got enough of a squad, it'd be fine, we'd keep him off plastic. But I think they're not going to play 90 minutes every week. They shouldn't be. I'm not really sure why Johnny Hayes is getting so much time, and again, getting new players in might push him out a bit. But I do think Mal McGinn and Johnny Hayes are experienced, solid players who probably have quite a lot to offer. It may be that is more valuable in training, to teach some of the things to some youngsters coming through, as opposed to them actually playing a significant amount of game time. Yeah. But they are getting to an age where they're not going to be as they were. And if we are signing new players, we're probably going to see some of those players taking a back seat. McGinn's got a year. Doesn't look like that get extended, I would suspect. Johnny Hayes is only till next summer as well, is he not? So
yeah, even though McGinn's not maybe putting brilliant performances at club level, he still managed to get an international call-up. So
I was quite surprised by that one. I thought he would actually struggle given he's had no game time. But
especially when they didn't call it Liam Boyce either. I thought it was a very, very strange decision from Northern Ireland.
He plays pretty well for country, and he's technically a decent player. I just
wish he could relay it on his club for.
To be fair, there's free kicks. I think, Mel McGinn on just for this free kick. But
I wouldn't want to indulge in.
Get some new players in, and they will push out some of the players who are not going to be able, to play 90 minutes, and they will be useful squad players on the bench. Once we get into the Scottish Cup and things, we'll need a bit of rotation probably.
I do like that point though, Erin, about their good experience. People even said about Scott Brown coming in, the kind of knowledge and that he can pass off down to the younger players. But at the end of the day, I suppose football's a business. people have been speaking about Devlin, the waste of the wage on Devlin just now with his situation. Are we worth paying up, a full playing wage on an Niall McGinn just to pass experience down? Is there maybe options we can look at there? But it's maybe a point for another day.
Where is Michael Devlin?
Exactly. Well, there's a Twitter page dedicated to that now.
But I mean, genuinely, I don't. If you're not only giving him 6 months, so he doesn't appear soon. 6 months will last.
Yeah. Fraser, though, we're now 4 games without a win, given recent results. I've just come off a work Friday call that we normally have to chat all things football ahead of the weekend. And Andrew Ellis wants to know, do you think the pre-season optimism will be beginning to fade amongst the support on the back of these four games?
Probably, I would say so. We did have a chat offline that it is seen as a rebuild, so we probably need to give Glass a wee bit of time.
Yeah.
I think I've aired my thoughts to yourself before about not being convinced about Glass's appointment, but it is still early days. You can't judge him this quickly. I think the one thing that we mentioned is the cup results. That was just a rinse and repeat of Dundee United in the Scottish Cup in the spring. Previous managers, when you think back, Jimmy Calderwood, Derek McInnes, they've essentially had a lot of pressure put on them towards the end of their spells with cup results not going their way.
I saw a lot of that being branded about Michael, text saying you sacrificed the League Cup for that result last night. I don't really think we did sacrifice it. That starting 11 that played against Wraith had enough quality to beat Wraith. We were 1-0 up at half-time and just didn't turn up in the second half. And we brought on players of a calibre that should have got us back into the game, and they didn't. So I think it's maybe, I would, for me personally, question the players' mentality in that game and the players' desire rather than saying it was kind of sacrificed. I don't know, Erin, if you'd agree with that.
Yeah, I think we rested players for the Wraith game with one eye on Qarabag and kind of understand it to an extent, although, should we have players who can play 90 minutes twice a week? Yes. I can understand wanting to avoid injuries, and you maybe think, well, we'll keep some of our players out, we don't need them all to play, but you should have 11 players who could play 90 minutes twice a week easily, so I don't have to worry about it. I don't know if we sacrificed the League Cup so much as
threw it away.
Because if you look at that team, and it's not any disrespect to Wraith, we should have won that game regardless. We then, at half-time, panicked, or not long after half-time, and put on, was it Scott Brown and Lewis Ferguson?
Yeah, Ryan Hedges came on as well.
Yeah, and the problem then is that we think, right, okay, this isn't going how we planned, need to just actually change it around, and we basically need to try and get the team that we should have had maybe start out playing. And nothing happened.
No, it didn't.
It got worse. And we started the last 10 minutes, we played that out as though we thought we were 2-1 up. It was not the kind of performance you would expect. And to be honest, Wraith were really good in the second half. They came out and played, and we seemed to think we'd done enough in the first half of the 1-0 to just have a sit down, doesn't really matter, we'll see this game out. Yeah. And the problem with that is that the League Cup is realistically, something we could have been looking at winning. It was one-off games. Okay, we've got Celtic in the next round, but again, I doubt, they're not unbeatable.
Yeah.
And it just feels like being out of 2 competitions already. And when you say, no wins in 4, it's not great, is it?
It's not. And, and that's why, Andrew asked about the optimism fading, Erin, because you're totally right. We're out with 2 cup competitions by the end of August. Between now and January, all we've got to focus on is the league. But would you agree with what Fraser was saying there about that we do need a degree of patience, because at the end of the day, this is a rebuild job. The squad's not complete. Fraser's right, 4 days until the end of the transfer window, hopefully going to get a few more signings in between now and then. The squad is still probably learning each other's games, still trying to gel. So do the fans need to be patient on the back of maybe some unexpected results that might come along the way?
Yeah, I think there's no real reason why we shouldn't be able to win something. Anyone, any team can theoretically win anything. St Johnstone won 2 cups last season. There is nothing to say that anyone can't win, especially the cup competitions. But the league, you've already seen, it's us, Hibs and Celtic. Us, Hibs and Hearts, at the top. Celtic and Rangers already dropping points. It will not be anything like it was last season in terms of one team running away with it, I don't think.
Yeah.
And I think the problem was the last season was so bad, really bad. And to be honest, the season before, other than the Killie Cup win, which was a brilliant night, and I think the first game, the Hearts 3-2, and I think we had a draw with Rangers on a Wednesday night. I think that was that season as well. I want to say we were 2-0 down and they got a draw. But other than that, every game was horrendous. And I don't even think, it is obviously about winning games, but partly as well, I think it's about actually wanting people to watch it. You must have found the last season, especially when you're just sat at home, horrible weather on a Saturday afternoon, you put the TV on to watch the game, and at half time you think, probably just have a nap, to be honest. Some of the performances were absolutely dreadful. And we're not going to start playing like Barcelona, but it'd be nice to be able to go and enjoy some decent football. And I think Tynecastle, we saw a little bit of that. The Hacking game was amazing.
Yeah.
And a big thing with getting fans back is wanting people to go watch. And results really help. And to be honest, I say if we won every single game 1-0 and we were grinding out horrific results and we won the league and the Scottish Cup, but I couldn't care less if it looks good or not.
Yeah,
but I do think you need, you want a little bit of flair. We were playing so badly last season. And you want a little bit of excitement. You want to think we're going to score a few goals. I don't mind conceding as much if we're scoring and winning.
Yeah.
You want exciting football. And that is hopefully what we're going to get. Glass seems to be quite attacking. And Alan Russell, I think, is a great acquisition. We just need to get some players in and then have an actual think about what we think our best squad is. And Glass actually seems to be okay, other than the rotation with having 2 games a week.
Yeah.
I think he is going to hopefully get himself a team he quite likes and stick with it, as opposed to the tombola coming out every week. And who knows who's playing on a Saturday. And it just becomes, I can understand giving players an opportunity, but I never saw the basis for it. I also like his substitutions because he tends to do them half time or early in the second half, whereas Denver can just put players on at 89 minutes. Utter waste. So I think there's definitely glimpses of promise with Glass. I think the thing that's going to be difficult is that people need to probably manage their expectations. And, we haven't brought in Jose Mourinho or something. We're not going to suddenly, we haven't got any money. No one's got any money. So, we weren't going to go and win. I joke about it. I say every season we're going to win the league. And in theory, we could. But going out last night to Qarabag, I don't think there's many managers that necessarily would have done much differently or done much better last night.
Well, and it's interesting, and I suppose, for me, it was just the manner in which we lost the game last night that really kind of irked me. The fact that the game was dead and buried after 18 minutes. We didn't really put up much of a fight to get back into the game. And I agree with the kind of points you have both covered there about maybe some of the early season optimism. Calum said in one of the first episodes after winning against Dundee United that we were going to win the lot. Well, we're maybe going to win half of it now. We'll see what's coming, but I suppose it's now a return to Saturday 3 p.m. kickoffs. After, of course, this weekend against Ross County, and I'm much more of a fan of a Saturday game than I am a Sunday game, especially with a few drinks on the bus to work the next day. It's definitely a better thing. I get
confused about it when it's a Sunday. Like on a Saturday, I'll be like, oh wait, we're not going anywhere today, it's Saturday. And then Sunday feels like Saturday, so on Sunday night you think, oh wait, it's Monday. Saturday games nice.
Yeah.
And I think what we need is to win on Sunday. We take the international break as a little regroup. We're only got Gallagher and Fergie going away and McGinn, I suppose. But
Ramsey with under 21s.
Yeah, that's really good actually. I'm pleased to see that because there's certainly no rule that you need to play for the under 19s first, and that's absolute nonsense. So, assuming none of them get injured anywhere, and we'll have some new players in, the new players can get settled in, we'll get some decent training done. We use the break as actually a good opportunity to regroup, and then we come back to Motherwell and St Johnstone, which, again, if we play decent football, we can end up in a strong position before the game against Celtic. But the starting fixtures this season have hopefully done us some good.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fraser, I just wanted to ask you on a point that Erin made about, kind of a bit of consistency. Now that we are out of Europe, will it almost benefit Stephen Glass and the team as a whole because we won't need to chop and change or use the tombola, as Erin says?
Yeah, definitely. You just need to bed in, starting 11. I think we've seen a lot of it. Ramsey and McKenzie will bed in. Hopefully won't see too much of Jack Gurr, but that's another point. We will need to bed in centre half, particularly if we sign a new one, and hopefully we do. And we should see a much more settled
definitely.
side.
And we'll hopefully see some transfers coming in. Now, those of you that have been tuning into the podcast over the last few episodes will notice that there's been a certain somebody missing from the show because he decided to catch COVID and didn't have anything able to set up for the show. So this quite ties in nicely for the transfer segment. Coming back on the show, making his reappearance, long awaited, Calum is finally back.
Hey, the prodigal son returns.
I know, and they're probably wondering why I wasn't involved earlier. Didn't get into the game last night, so there's no point in me being involved. But it's good to be back. I've missed it. Marley Watkins made a return to Aberdeen. I'm making a return to Red Tinted Glasses. It's good to be back.
Yeah, nicely linked. And I think it's fair to say Ian Cool won Twitter yesterday with his excellent detective work on that signing.
Mm-hmm.
Finding the plane that Marley Watkins was boarding on his Instagram and then tracking it all the way into Aberdeen. But Fraser, are you happy with that signing?
Yeah, I think we saw last night that Ramirez and Jet, neither of them are going to stretch defences and get beyond them. But Ramirez reminds me a lot of Adam Rooney. Jet just isn't the sort of player that's going to make a centre-half turn and run. I think we saw how good Watkins was in the early games of last season before he ended up crocked. So the words were unfinished business on Red TV last night, and I definitely think that's the case there. So, solid signing.
Yeah, and Calum, I think what Fraser says there is a good point because he does offer something different. There's obviously been some question marks around Jet's performances recently. We know what we get with Watkins, but maybe I think a few people maybe had questions around his fitness, and hopefully he can stay fit for us.
I think that is a concern, but when we had him, previously, we sort of realised quite quickly that perhaps he wasn't an out-and-out number 9. Obviously, we do have that now, so hopefully Watkins can come in and be that sort of missing link between sort of the midfield and the strikers, and some added power and firepower. I think he offers something different. I'm happy with it. A 2-year deal. The concern is if he can stay fit, but fingers crossed all goes well. I'll try not to be doom and gloom about it.
No, and I think, we also further strengthened our forward area with the signing of Austin Samuels coming in on loan from Wolves. And Erin, I think, that just highlights we needed something different up there. It is only a loan signing. There's been some question marks because it's a bit unrecognised coming in from their under-23 sides, but seems to have a lot of pace about him. And we just need players that can, Fraser touched on without hedges, without that creativity. So maybe something we can see from Austin Samuels.
Yeah, I think Alan Russell apparently is really keen on him. I really rate Alan Russell, and I think we are benefiting from his misfortune, shall we say, that we have him. Because I think in other circumstances he would probably have been somewhere a little bit more exciting. But I think we probably needed someone, kind of a striking coach, someone to do that for a while. We've gone through a run of bringing in strikers who are, on paper should be all right and then turn out to be horrendous, or, we're sceptical of them and it turns out we were right to be sceptical. I was really excited when we signed Canberra last year, and it turned out he was one of the worst people I've ever seen play football. He was wearing gloves in April, which just says I'm not planning to run about at any point during this 90 minutes. It was, and Hornby got injured after. Calum Hendry, St Johnson's 4th choice striker, turned out to be the best of those signings.
Yeah.
And Ryan Edmondson, I think we all had hope for, and I just wasn't up to it. I think Ramirez looks good. I think you're right. He's much more of a. He'll benefit from being able to play quite high and get balls through to him. And similarly, I think Jet is not bad at doing some of the work, but probably needs a bit of help there. And Marley Watkins will hopefully fill that kind of role. You know, the Ryan Hedges maybe-esque role if he can just play up the middle. I really liked him, and if he can stay injury free, that is a cheap and decent signing. He will also want to. Is it 3 years we've got?
2 for Marley. 2.
He will want to probably long term go somewhere else, but he knows that if you're a footballer without a club, you're going to struggle to get anywhere. So if he puts in a really good shift for us for a year, that gives him a lot of opportunities. Have we got an option to buy on?
We do,
yeah. So again, that is, I think, the kind of signings we need to be making. I think a loan is fine if you've got an option to buy.
Yep.
But long term, 6-month loan players, I'm not sure if we want to be doing that constantly. But they all seem positive signings. I think everyone's quite chuffed about Marley Watkins. As soon as Cardiff released him, I think people were saying, well, why not have him back?
I mean, for me, certainly, I think we saw what he offered last season, and I don't see why, we wouldn't be happy. It's another squad filler. People have been complaining that we've not got many options up top. Calum, me and you've discussed it, that our only other option was Michael Ruth. So I think we needed that in, and it's a player that knows the setup at Pittodrie. And, Erin touches on, Alan Russell was keen on Austin Samuels. Maybe working with Alan Russell's can improve Marley Watkins' game as well. But on Michael Ruth, do you think the signings of those 2 players will lead to him going out on loan?
I think so. I think that would be best for him. He's obviously still very young, got a lot of time to develop still, and obviously has been highly thought of under previous managers. Hasn't been given much of a chance under Stephen Glass yet, but it's early days and he can benefit from going out and playing every week, hopefully, and scoring goals too. But just to briefly go back for Austin Samuels, it's another type of option as well.
Yeah.
They're all very different strikers, so that's exactly what you want. Different options, you can switch it up. But I think Michael Ruth probably will end up out on loan. We'll probably see that happen. Championship club, most likely. Yeah, or maybe back to Queen's Park. You never know. Now that they're, spending the big bucks and flying high. Yeah,
definitely. And I suppose, Calum, the real reason that I was excited to get you back on the podcast today was the rumoured signing of Matty Longstaff. I think took everyone by surprise when the news broke during the game last night. Not that you'd have had any idea what was going on last night. But as a Newcastle fan yourself, what can we kind of expect from Matty Longstaff?
It's a good box-to-box midfielder, Matty. He's got an engine on him. I think Newcastle fans have got very high hopes for him, but Steve Bruce, for whatever reason, doesn't really seem to fancy him. The less I speak about Steve Bruce, probably the better. But he came in, he scored a goal on his Premier League debut against Man United, the winner, and then he scored against Man United again in the reverse leg. So he's got a goal in him. That's what happens when you give him a chance, and hopefully he can come here and shine brightly. What am I talking about? Who knows? But and I'm just looking on Twitter whilst you guys were recording earlier, and apparently he was at Cormac Park today. He was there today, so by the time it's out, it's probably going to be confirmed, because that's always what happens with us.
It does indeed. But Fraser, you suppose the fact that he's going to choose us, or seem to have chosen us over some of the Championship teams that have been mentioned, Stoke, Sheffield United, West Brom, speaks quite highly of maybe the package that we're offering, but also where he sees his game, wants to come and test himself up here.
Yeah, I think there's a part to that. I think also he's probably at a crossroads in his career where he needs to go out and play every single week. And is he going to do that at West Brom? Possibly not. They might rotate him through. Whereas at Aberdeen, particularly if, as it feels like, Ferguson will make way, and particularly after last night where we'll probably need to cash in on him, then he is going to play every single week. And having that chance to play every single week and test yourself against Rangers, Celtic, Hearts, Hibs, Dundee United will stand him in good stead to go back to Newcastle and try and make an impact.
Yeah, and Erin, I suppose on that signing, or as we should say just now because it's not confirmed, the potential signing of Matty Longstaff, do you feel that will mark the end of Lewis Ferguson? Because as a box-to-box midfielder, that is the type of player that Longstaff is, as Calum's just said. I don't think he's going to want to come up here and just sit on the bench, and I don't see us benching Scott Brown more often than not.
No, the Lewis Ferguson thing, I'm not sure. I don't know if he's going or not. It's a tough one. There was moments where it looked as though he probably doesn't look very happy. Him pushing to take that penalty yesterday, you think, well, he's trying to, is he trying to advertise himself? Is he trying to get
his last goal bonus in?
I don't know. It's a weird one, isn't it? But to be honest, I wouldn't be giving anyone a goal bonus for anything last night. I don't know if he's going or not. I would be disappointed if he was. I think he is really good. I don't know if there's potentially maybe some tension with Glass or something because he seemed happy enough. I don't know if it's just having his head turned because he's got an agent who likes to talk about big money somewhere else. And realistically, yeah, of course, there's places you can go and get paid more money, and most people in their own jobs, obviously that's the case. But it's not just about that, and I know that's easy to say, but it isn't really, because you do have to weigh up, well, okay, fine, he's going to go and get X amount somewhere else, but what does that mean in the grand scheme of his career? Mm. And, a Scotland call-up, would he get that if he was playing, somewhere in England, sitting on a bench in a championship? I don't know. And I think he has a lot to offer, and I think he can learn an awful lot from Scott Brown. He's the kind of player who will benefit massively from that, and it would be a shame for him to go now. Mm-hmm. I think the worry is, are we just collecting players now? The amount of people I've seen us linked with, are we just going to have far too many of them? We're back to 3 subs in the league, so we don't need 20 new players. We need to think about quality as well as just announcing signings every day. And Dead McInnes, I think, sometimes got into this where we'd announce signing after signing and none of them came to much. So I think we need a really solid centre half, at least one. We needed one before, we probably could do the 2 now, but one will maybe do us as long as they've got a left foot, because Ross McCrory cannot play that position ever again. And then Ross McCrory can come to midfield. We're actually going to have a lot more depth than I thought. I would love us to keep Lewis Ferguson. Lewis Ferguson's going on the back of my away shirt, but I can't get it printed until after Tuesday. So I need him to stay, because what else am I going to get? Scott Brown on the back.
But Calum, Erin makes a good point. Lewis Ferguson just celebrating getting a Scotland call-up. Would he want to jeopardise that ahead of the October international break by going and warming the bench somewhere down in England if he was to move?
It's something he's got to consider. I think he would benefit. This is not from self perspective, obviously. I think he would benefit from another season here, learning from Scott Brown.
Yeah, exactly.
How many clubs down south or wherever he may end up has someone like him in their ranks where he can learn from? And in the grand scheme of things, it's not like that'll then mean he never gets this big money move. In fact, perhaps makes it more likely. So he carries on the way he's going. Scotland call-ups, goals, learning from Scott Brown, maybe ending up with a winner's medal, less likely now, but you never know. I think he would benefit from another season. I hope he does stay. But it's an interesting point and raises there as well. We are stacked in midfield now, and it's another thing I'm possibly thinking about is Dean Campbell. What does it mean for that boy? If we're bringing in Matty Longstaff as well? Well, I suppose, but
before Tynecastle, I would have said he might benefit, and I really like him, so it's hard to say, so I would have thought he might benefit from going out on loan. It's brilliant on Sunday. Yeah, we've apparently just signed a defender.
Yeah, David Bates, that was the other thing.
From apparently 3 years. So
agreed the fee and contract and things as well, so apparently that'll get done.
And he's coming to Cormac Park to for medical. So we've got a defender, we get Matty Longstaff, that's another midfielder, we've got our new striker in, we've got Marley Watkins, the creative aspect, probably to replace Hedges. I'd like us to get Jamie McGrath, and apparently we're also looking at Jason Kerr.
There's so much going on, man. I don't know.
It's quite exciting, because normally on transfer deadline day, as an Aberdeen fan, we're all just like,
I think towards the end of the deadline, we might see some departure, certainly loans, like we touched on Michael Ruth. Fraser, I'm probably the resident Scotland fan. I know obviously I like going home and away with the Tartan Army as well, but you're definitely more dedicated to the TA than I am. Do you think it's the point about Ferguson's Scotland call? I don't think he'll feature in this international break, but is that certainly something he should consider when it comes to a transfer window?
He should consider it in terms of going somewhere where he's going to play first team football. Yeah. Going to Watford and sitting in the reserves wouldn't do his career in the short term any good. I think we need to consider two parts of this. Obviously, Ferguson does want to go and progress his career elsewhere. So I think we need to consider the club aspect. Yeah. And part of me feels like bringing in Longstaff will mean that we cash in on Ferguson to try and sort of round off those COVID losses. Now, that's not what any of us want. That's not what I want. But I just think that's what's going to happen, unfortunately. And pragmatically, I could sort of understand it. It'll be a bitter pill to swallow, but probably one that we will have to.
Yeah, it sounds like your dog's not a big fan of Ferguson leaving either.
No, he's not.
But I suppose, Erin's saying there, it looks like David Bates is a way to sign. We saw him at Rangers previously before going out to Germany to kind of ply his trade and play more regularly at Hamburg. And Fraser, again, he was another name that was linked with Scotland call-ups during a successful time at Hamburg. Do you think, he would be a good addition to our centre-back?
He's what Glass is looking for McCrory to do, which is play the ball out from the back. That is what he did at Hamburg. That's what he did in a rather shite Rangers team. Sorry for the swear word, but they were bloody awful. Is he going to be an improvement on McCrory? Probably. Is he going to be what we're looking for defensively to stem goals against? I don't know, but let's give him a chance. I wouldn't write him off. And obviously, actually having had continental experience as Daft David Bates, that's something that we don't really have too much of. So whether he's good enough for the national team, nah, not for me. But he needs to get, he needs to get game time. He's not getting it at Hamburg, so it's probably not the worst idea for him to come to Aberdeen.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I suppose, be a good partnership alongside Declan Gallagher, who, I thought was actually quite solid last night from a defensive point of view. There's also been some question marks around his distribution, but I don't know what's more embarrassing, the folk tagging Declan Gallagher in tweets that he's terrible, or the fact that Declan Gallagher's now gone and replied and asked them to DM him to discuss the matter. I just have one thought about Gallagher, and it's probably a wee bit early for us to judge, but any time that I've seen him play as part of a 3, he looks immensely more comfortable than he does as part of a 2. You've seen it at Livingston, where he was so successful as part of that Halkett, Gallagher, Lithgow 3. He was better at Motherwell in a 3 than in a 2. And obviously we've seen him play for Scotland both in a 2 and in a 3. And when he played in a 2 with McKenna, we looked a lot more leaky. Whereas when he played in a 3, particularly last autumn, he looked a colossus. So part of me is wondering, would Gallagher actually suit a 3 better? And it's probably not something that we want to see, but it's something that's just gnawing at the back of my mind to watch over the next few months. Yeah, no, definitely. And Calum, obviously exciting to see a centre-back being lined up, given we were mourning the death of Andy Considine, judging by that team photo last night.
I'm glad I didn't get in to see that, honestly.
I'm not sure if I like it or not. It feels a bit weird.
No, it is weird.
He's not dead, is he?
It's a shame. It is obviously a very serious injury, and we do wish him a speedy recovery.
Oh, I'm actually
if it was any other team, we'd be ripping the piss out of them for doing exactly the same.
If that happens down south, we're going, now Tim Potts this. On David Bates, though, coming in, quite happy we'll be signing a defender. It's weird that we're now making all these additions. Now we've been papped out of 2 competitions. Maybe should have done it a bit earlier, but oh well. I still think our left-sided centre half is very much needed now. Constantine's injured, this
is why I'm wondering if we're going to be repositioning Dean Campbell, given his. And I agree with Erin. I thought he was excellent in the second half at Tynecastle, filling in at a position he's not used to. But I'm not really a fan of playing players that aren't accustomed, and we've seen it this season already with Ross McCrory. Doesn't look comfortable in that position. It's costing us goals. Is that something we should be exploiting for the rest of the season now that we're just got to focus on the league until January? I'm not really sure. But before we look ahead to Saturday, I just want to say it was obviously a nice tribute that was paid last night in the 26th minute. The minute's applause for Greg Mackay, who sadly passed away last year. Well received around the ground. I feel a bit sorry for Steve Tosh, who thought it was a minute's applause for Considine, but I'm glad Andy Barge quickly corrected him on that. But great to see the whole ground joining in on that minute's applause. Calum, looking ahead to Sunday's game, though, how important is it we bounce back with 3 points?
Absolutely huge. I think Erin raised a good point as well. Going into an international break as well, you always want to go in on a high. I think that makes a more enjoyable experience for everyone, fans and players. But also after such a poor string of results, I suppose, losing out to Wraith, going out of the Conference League, and obviously dropping points at Hearts as well. It's massive that we bounce back, and getting that feel-good spirit back before the international break with new players to settle into, very important. So fingers crossed we can bounce back, but at this stage I'll take any sort of win. It doesn't even have to. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be entertaining, even though that's what I've been crying out for. This one, I'll just take anything.
To be honest, right now I'll take a clean sheet, and that's not just because Andrew Ellis said if we keep a clean sheet on Sunday he'll run down Union Street naked, because we just seem totally incapable of doing so. But Fraser, are you in agreement with what Calum says? It is just important to get any form of win and bounce back from yesterday's disappointment?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly because living up here, I'm exposed to quite a few Ross County supporters roundabout work, and their general judgment of their team this season is murder. So frankly, I'd be extremely disappointed if we drop points against them. And hopefully we see the return of the Showtime Dons on Sunday, because Stephen Glass's Showtime Dons were not there last night. So grind out a win would be all right, but hopefully we see the return of some free-flowing Showtime football to get the fans excited.
Yeah, and obviously up until Sunday, Ross County were yet to register a shot on target in the league, and then scoring twice against Rangers. But Erin, do you expect any changes to the Aberdeen team from Thursday night going into the game on Sunday?
Probably not, to be honest. I think we'll maybe just keep it how it is. The back's not great at all. I mean, I really, really like Ross McCrory, but not there. So I don't know if we might just try and sort something out at the back, because Ross County beat 2 past Rangers, and Rangers aren't invincible this season, certainly not at all. However, that's not a bad result for them, not really.
In terms of their confidence, it's good to getting a couple of goals, but I suppose my question mark would be, if we sign David Bates, say today, he's not played yet this season, so he's not going to be match fit to go into the starting lineup. But I'm going to be really interested to see the team news on Sunday, because Lewis Ferguson will be the name I think that a lot of people will be looking out for to see if he's included in the squad. And I think if he's not in the squad, I don't know if you agree, and that signal maybe where he's off to, or that he is off.
If he's in the squad, he's surely staying, because you would not have agreed any sort of deal provisionally and have a player getting risk and an injury on Sunday.
Yeah.
I would suspect if he's playing, he's staying. I think if he's not staying, we need to be really, really pushy about how much money we want, because I think English clubs particularly seem to think they can just come up here, have a laugh at Scottish football and buy our players for cheap because Scottish football's a joke. And I don't think that's right at all. Cosgrove went for 2 million to Birmingham. If Cosgrove had gone to Birmingham from another English Championship side, it'd have been 10, because they think Scottish footballers are cheap because it's rubbish up here and they can just buy our players for, under the value. I'm not saying Cosgrove's worth more than £2 million, but the figures they have, Jack Bailey's gone for £100 million. And I do think it's disrespectful for them to assume that our players, none of them are worth anything. That's not correct at all. McKenna got £5 million for. I think Lewis Ferguson, if you're looking at them directly, is potentially worth more than that. McKenna's more easily replaceable, and I've not been devastated to see him go, okay, we're struggling at the moment, Andy Considine's not about. But Ash Taylor put in a decent shift last season, and I think he got a lot of undeserved abuse. Had it not been for Ryan Hedges coming back and scoring against Livy, we could have seen Ash Taylor the Player of the Year award. So, that's a reflection on the poor season overall. But certainly, I would say that there's players, Cosgrove, 2 million. Well, if Cosgrove's 2 million, what's Lewis Ferguson worth? Because he's far better and harder to replace. So I'm hopeful with Ferguson playing. I don't mind seeing a new player playing if they're up to it. I suppose it depends on what his fitness is like, how he fits in.
I think though the problem with the Ferguson deal now is, and it's kind of what Fraser touched on, we're maybe between a rock and a hard place, that we've lost out financially in Europe and the club will be wanting to recoup some losses. But I just hope that, you know, the club have talked a good game about not accepting anything less and wanting to bring in players that will improve the squad. I think we're seeing that with some of the signings that we're making or looking to make, certainly. And let's just hope they stick to their guns when it comes to selling players. It's going to be an interesting game on Sunday. With no disrespect to Ross County, it's probably the perfect opponents for us to face at home.
Do you remember that they beat us 4-1 last night?
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. It's at home. It's a different team in that. But
yeah, I would be astonished if it was 4-1 Ross County again.
To be fair, I wouldn't be astonished
if that's happening.
But you know, it'll be an interesting game. Hopefully, that you know, still we get another good crowd at Pittodrie to support the team despite what happened last night. And you know, Fraser and Erin, it's been great getting you both onto the show and joining us to go over what happened last night and discuss the transfer talk. And ahead of Sunday's game, I caught up with Press and Journal sports reporter Andy Skinner to give us an insight into what's been like for the Ross County season so far. Well, Andy, welcome to Red Tinted Glasses. It's nice to finally get you on the podcast.
Thanks very much, Glen. I think a long time in coming. It's, I suppose, opportunity to come on from a Ross County point of view only comes 3 times a season, so
it does indeed. And I suppose you also have the benefit of maybe having a bit of an Aberdeen perspective as well, given your club roots. But obviously, work perspective, you cover Ross County home and away largely. Has that been enjoyable for you doing that?
Yeah. Last 7 years, I've been at the P&J, mixing up between covering Ross County and Caley Thistle, and there's been some great times covering both clubs in that time. I've seen them both win their first piece of national silverware, but it's maybe not quite gone to plan for both of them, it's fair to say. Since then, County maybe had a slightly better run at it, and obviously getting relegated, but bouncing straight back up again. But they've maybe struggled a wee bit in the Premiership since they came back. But no, there's been plenty of interesting moments in amongst it all, and still get a real buzz out of it, and managed to accommodate the odd Dons game in between times as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose it must be a buzz just being able to work at the football. Just before we go into kind of speaking about this season, what was it like for you as a journalist last season, experiencing those empty stadiums and silent grounds, and how good has it been getting fans back in and getting atmosphere back into games again?
It's genuinely made all the difference. Some of the games that I was at last season, I mean, there was a variety of games where it maybe didn't have as profound an effect. I mean, I'll go through the usual suspects, like perhaps Hamilton, even some Ross County home games where, the lack of a crowd maybe wasn't as tangible because, it's not too different from the norm, without being disrespectful. But when I was going to the bigger grounds like Ibrox, Parkhead, the Scotland home matches, Andy Considine's debut for the national team. And then the other really strange one was covering Hearts the day that they lifted the championship title. Yes, that day. And just walking around outside the ground was as strange as anything, because I was aware that a number of Hearts fans would have given anything really to have had the press access that I had that day, just in order to see that. So there was a wee bit of guilt at knowing that there were a lot of fans that were being locked out of the ground, but by the same token, it was quite a thrill being among a very select few people that were there.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I suppose now that we see the fans coming back, we're kind of maybe seeing a bit of change in certain teams' fortunes now with fans, and how much certainly from an Aberdeen point of view, we've seen the fans be able to help the team in certain games this season. We're recording this on Wednesday. So hopefully the fans will help on the game on Thursday. Hopefully I'm not going to jinx that. But let's look ahead to the weekend's game, Andy, when County travel to Pittodrie to face Aberdeen. It's fair to say it's not been a particularly easy start for the Staggies in the Premiership this season, failing to score in their first 2 games and then coming up against Rangers, Aberdeen and Celtic. It's probably not the start Malky Mackay was wanting, was it?
No, and the 2 games that they played before Rangers were Hibs and St Johnstone, so they're from the very start as last season's top 5.
Yeah.
I think that I was on another podcast doing my season preview before it started, and I think I said that I wouldn't be surprised if County are waiting a wee while before that first win comes along. And that's for a number of reasons, not just because of that start, but you also factor in the turnover that there's been in the squad. Malky came in, relatively late in the day. County still took a good 2 weeks or so after their survival was confirmed before they announced that John Hughes wasn't going to be staying and Malky was going to be coming in. There was then another bit of a wait before the retained list came out, and that showed that almost 15 players, I think, were moving on.
Yeah. So,
when you factor in the amount of recruitment that's been needed, and there was also a big COVID situation. I don't know if you remember it.
Yeah, I was going to come to that, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that's maybe had a part to play in their slow start to the season?
Without a doubt, because, that basically prevented them from playing 2 League Cup matches in their. It was 2 games against Forfar and Dundee, I think. So, in one of them there was going to be a Premiership test, and most of the managers that I've spoken to over the years have said that they use that as part of their build-up for the Premiership season, even though they're competitive matches. Yeah. They've got a massive role to play in preparing the squad for the fitness demands of a Premiership season. The other knock-on effect was, because it was such a big COVID outbreak that swept its way through the whole club pretty much, they had to lock the doors for 10 days or so.
Oh, okay.
And that prevented Malky from going out and trying to recruit players. He couldn't bring anyone up to show him around the facilities, and it just put the brakes on everything. So, yeah, there was a feeling going into the start of the league season that County were a bit undercooked, and also just it was very uncertain as to how they were going to play. No one had really had much of a chance to see what Malky was planning to do with the squad. And that still looks to be a bit of a work in progress. So, the slow start for all those factors doesn't come as too much of a surprise. Yeah. I think, if it's still, if the form is still poor come, the next international break, as in one after the one that's coming up. Yeah, that it might be time to get a wee bit concerned at that stage, but I think until then we might not see a true indication of how Ross County are going to really look like under Malky.
Yeah, and I suppose maybe from a County perspective, they'll maybe look to the games after the upcoming international break, maybe Celtic aside, as to where they can start testing themselves against maybe teams that they see themselves kind of finishing around or challenging for to take points off of. Again, no disrespect to them when it comes up to playing your likes Aberdeen, Rangers and Celtic. Maybe kind of the test, but do you think, given that they managed to bag their first goals of the season against Rangers, that's going to give them a bit of confidence going into this weekend?
I think it will, because the attacking side of it was lacking in the first 2 games. Don't think they had a shot on target.
No, from what I saw in my research, no.
Yeah, 2 difficult sides they were up against, but the attacking side of it was taking a while to take shape. They got a good clean sheet against St Johnstone in the first game, and the defensive side of it has been their Achilles heel for the last 2 seasons. So that was encouraging, but I think just getting off the mark in that Rangers game, keeping it quite a close encounter at certain stages of it, will give them something to hold on to going into the game at Pittodrie.
Yeah, definitely. And, you touched on there about the turnover of players that Ross County have gone through in the close season, obviously losing experienced players such as Michael Gardyne. And, it's been a real rebuilding job on and off the field for the Staggies. Is this season really just about survival for them?
I think when they set out, and when Roy McGregor set out in making the change, he did an interview just after the season finished, prior to Malky's appointment, where he talked about trying to kick on. The last couple of seasons, County have been in a bit of a relegation dogfight. They finished 10th the last 2 seasons. I know the first of those didn't finish, it wasn't played to the completion, but they've always been in and around that bottom 2, ultimately managing to avoid any of the playoff drama. But I think County had a really good, strong finish to the campaign last season. They won their last 3 games, and although that was great drama, I think Roy was probably looking quite enviously at the likes of St Mirren, Livingston, even Dundee United, who'd come up that season, who were, cigars were out, and no last minute panic in terms of their league status. And although it's a big ask for them to go and push towards the top 6, and particularly this season when it's been widely considered it's the strongest the league's been in years, but I think there was a feeling that County could push on and consolidate their top flight status with a bit more security. All this kind of early season, I don't want to call it turmoil, but just just the uncertainty of it all, and the fact that we're still at a bit of a loss as to how the team's going to shape up is maybe something that could ultimately make them satisfied with securing another survival by any means. But it's early to say. I think it will really depend on their form coming into the autumn to Christmas period, and that could shape them up for how they're going to ultimately finish.
Yeah, and I suppose for those of you that are tuning into this episode that have listened to previous episodes when we had Ewan Rankin from the Talk Livy podcast on, Andy, he commented on Hamilton's relegation, where certain Livingston fans cheered Hamilton going down, but he kind of couldn't understand that because he felt that was almost like a kind of cushion for the bottom or 11th spot for Livingston. Do you think there's maybe that sort of feeling up in Dingwall as well?
It probably does expose County to being, traditionally the smallest club in the division. Maybe Livingston would be on a par with that. But Hamilton were perennially tipped to go down every single season. So I do get that way of thinking actually, and without that, County do look quite vulnerable, you could say, when it is predominantly city clubs and established Premiership clubs that are making up the 12 slots in the league. Yeah, although I'm sure there'll be fans of the other 11 teams will be praying to see County stay up, because it is certainly one of the most popular away trips on the calendar, and I think especially for Aberdeen fans this year with the proposed trip to Dingwall on the 2nd of January, all things going well, will certainly be a good full house to hopefully expect up there. I'm sure the Mallard will be ready for it. I think it's just got that novelty factor because it's a different road for the Central Belt clubs. They're going north rather than just along the road, and for Aberdeen it brings something different. Going north instead of south every other time. Yeah, and a lot of Aberdeen fans are based up this way, so that does bring a bit of a change to the Scottish football map. It does indeed, and I suppose it's another away fixture for Ross County. In their last away game, they got turned over 3-0 by Hibs, in which was largely seen as quite I don't know how to say this kindly, like a poor defeat, because it seemed there was kind of a reluctance from Malky to change things when it was 3-0. He went with a 5 at the back instead of, I think he goes with 3 at home. So he obviously changed it
defensively, and it didn't work. They got no benefit from Hibs having played in Europe on the Thursday night, which Aberdeen are going to do ahead of this clash. Do you expect Malky to have learned from that defeat in Edinburgh?
I mean, I was there that day, and Hibs were impressive actually in the first half. Got to say that. I think a lot of teams, better teams than County would have struggled coming up against Hibs with the form that they were on. They scored the 3 goals within 11 minutes or so, which kind of followed this similar kind of pattern to what Sunday's game against Rangers. They lost pretty quick fire goals on that occasion.
Yeah, it was 2 and 4 minutes in the first 20 minutes. So yeah.
So it's just those moments where they struggle to contain a free flowing opposition. They maybe need to be a bit more resilient. But after that, what was noticeable, my main takeaway from that game was that Malky kind of changed up the team in the second half. He brought 3 of his new signings on for debuts in the second half of that game, and all 3 of them showed up quite well. And it was a sign that he was looking to try and integrate these new signings in with a view to being first picks.
Yeah,
I think the level of his recruitment's actually been quite impressive, and it has actually shown to me that although that Malky Mackay's been out of club management for a while, he still does carry a fair bit of clout down south, and the contact he's got with some of the big clubs. He signed Alex Robertson on loan from Man City, Harry Clark from Arsenal, Jake Vokins from Southampton, Joseph Hungbo from Watford. So they're, I think he's still in a network with people in high places, and that helped him to broker a few on paper look pretty impressive deals. But I suppose the big concern maybe is the fact that a lot of these guys have arrived on loan. There's 5 or 6 of them out of 10 that he signed have been loan signings. So it's just that stability of squad going forward that it doesn't quite look like it's there yet. But in terms of looking at this game in comparison to the Hibs game, I think Hibs were impressive. They'd come off a 1-1 draw with Rijeka a few days before that, and their tie was still
kind of balance.
Dons are going to know one way or another, what the outcome will have been after Thursday's game. I'm conscious of the fact that the podcast's going out after.
I suppose it's going to be difficult. Like as we were recording this on the Wednesday, either Aberdeen are going to be coming into this game off a tremendous high, or they're going to be looking to bounce back and potentially take it out on Ross County. And it's a point, I suppose, as I said, we're recording this on Wednesday. So if we look at it from a point of view that Hibs played a lot of nice free-flowing attacking football that exposed Ross County, and they conceded goals quickly at Easter Road, and they did again on Sunday against Rangers. Aberdeen have been known this season to play that free-flowing attacking football and have been doing really well at Pittodrie especially. That must be a concern for County fans, that there's the possible potential for floodgates to open once again.
That's what I was getting at, really. I think the main variable will be how Aberdeen react to whatever the outcome is on Thursday, because they have shown, Aberdeen, that they're capable of putting on football that most teams have found difficult to come up against when they're in the mood. So whether it's a massive high, or if it's a bit of adversity that they're coming into the County game fresh from, it's how they can deal with that and try and replicate what they showed against Hacken, Dundee United, and in the second half at Tynecastle on Sunday. Yeah,
absolutely, which was off the back of a long trip to Baku as well. So even if things maybe don't go right on Thursday, we've seen how the team have reacted from a negative result and a long trip. So even it maybe offers encouragement to Aberdeen fans that if the game was to go the distance on Thursday night, there's maybe still hope leading into Sunday's fixture. Obviously, Sunday's fixture is not going to be he's not going to see any official away fans in attendance, although I'm sure maybe some Ross County fans that have soft spot for Aberdeen might find a way of gaining access to Pittodrie. Rob Wicks has come out and explained that decision, saying, it's due to the fact the red zone around the players that's still in place. Fans have had to be allocated into the away end. The club have also donated free tickets to NHS workers, and the launch of the Aberdeen Junior programme. There's I think 500 tickets available through that. I'm not going to give Rory one just yet for this game, but do you think there's a disappointment from the Ross County fans that they can't travel through to this game?
Yeah, I have seen a few grumbles on social media. I've not spoken to too many in person, but naturally, I can understand why they're disappointed at not being able to come through for it. I mean, the Hibs game, that was, I think, the day before the restrictions changed. So yeah, crowd of about 7,000, and they were maybe able to take that one a bit more
on the chin.
Yeah. But on this occasion, it's a bit frustrating for them. I think you probably are going to get inconsistencies for the next few weeks at least, as home clubs do get used to the notion of having fans back, and I think it's the home fans that certain clubs are able to pinpoint their focus on a little bit more than others. The very first game of the season, they were only allowed 2,000 fans in, and yet there was a pretty vibrant looking St Johnstone away end that day. So some clubs more than others can, give the home fans the advantage of being able to come along, because ultimately it's the home fans that, through a large part of the pandemic were supporting, that club, and Aberdeen, the priority probably goes towards them.
Yeah, and I think it is obviously a shame. It's a fixture most of us look forward to, but I don't think if you watched the game on Sunday and saw the pictures you touched on there, St Johnstone had an away allocation. It looked a pretty full allocation again on Sunday. It's not like it would be tit for tat. I think when it comes to the game in January, again, if obviously circumstances allow that fans can still travel at that point, which we hope will be the case. You don't think Ross County are going to say, well, no, we're not going to take that. They'll happily take the money, won't they?
Football's a business, Glen. I mean, it's there's no getting around that. And the away fans that come to these games in Dingwall, do generate an awful lot of money. That was something that was, even though County were allowed to have a small number of fans in the ground last season, for a few of the games, even if it was getting to the stage where they were going to be allowed to increase that, the fact that no away fans were going to be able to travel to the games was something that was going to hit them regardless. So no, I don't think there's going to be any element of that. And you saw from the atmosphere on Sunday, just how much of a difference that makes.
Yeah, well, obviously we'll want to keep an eye on anyway. Jordan White got off the mark for the season against Rangers with a very perfectly executed penalty. However, played the lone role striker at Easter Road in the last away game. Do you think it'll be another tough afternoon for him at Pittodrie, or do you think there might be a shift in formation from a Ross County perspective going into this game?
I think from the first two games, it was a back three or a back five that County played. Certainly revolving around a three-man central defence. And from what I could gather, Malky's preference long-term was to convert that into a back four. Okay. So I think it was just a matter of who was available for the first two games that forced him to play that way. He was really lacking in width. The only two wide players he had for those two games were Connor Randall, the right back, and Regan Charles-Cook, who's more of an attack-minded winger, but both of them were playing in a sort of wing-back role. He's managed to flesh it out a wee bit. He played Ben Payton at left-back, although that's not his natural position. he played left back against Rangers in a back four on Sunday. In terms of what that means for an attacking vantage point, I mean, Jordan White will probably lead the line again. I think Ross Callaghan was the kind of the closest man to him, but there are other strikers there. Dominic Samuel was brought in from Gillingham, and there's Ollie Shaw that's not had much game time at all. He caused Aberdeen no end of problems in even Dingwall in January. So there are options there, but I would imagine coming into this one, it'd be the type of game where Jordan White would probably be the focal point with an advanced midfield runner kind of supporting him. Harry Payton's another option for that position.
I suppose though, Ross County will be looking to the likes of Ross Callaghan in midfield to help get them a foothold up against. Again, obviously at this moment in time, assuming these players are all fit and going to play up the likes of Lewis Ferguson and Scott Brown, because it's going to be really important for Ross County to not get bogged down and overrun in midfield if they want to have a decent chance of getting a result. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, Callaghan had a great season with Hamilton last season, and I think regardless of how County play, he's going to be a big player for them. So having that strong midfield foundation is going to be huge. They've got David Kankola, the Austrian midfielder that made his first start on Sunday as well, and he's one that really kind of intrigues me. Actually, they fought pretty hard to get him signed. They had all sorts of kind of contracts and visa registration issues to kind of negotiate before they could get him over the line, just as a result of Brexit, I suppose. Very difficult to sign a player from Europe these days, but I think it will be a three-man midfield, and that probably would make it less likely that you'll see a second striker. But County very much still trying to build an identity in terms of how they're going to go about it, but the midfield is certainly going to be a key area for them.
Yeah, and I suppose Blair Spittle's also a player that County will be looking to from a creative perspective to help provide opportunity for Jordan White. It's been a maybe quiet start for him so far this season. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, another player that's maybe suffered just because of the change around in position that he's been deployed in. Even though he was playing centrally in the opening couple of games, I think because there was a big shift expected of the wing backs, he was having to cover an awful lot of ground out wide. But he's a player that finished last season really strongly. He was a huge part in them staying up with his form. And it came from nowhere, really, because he'd been pretty much, he was out of the side towards the end of Stuart Kettlewell's time. He was on loan at Partick Thistle, came back from Partick, where he'd been on loan, and John Hughes took him into the side and blooded him in. It became pretty much, one of their most important players. Yeah, he had the captain's armband on Sunday. So now there will be a lot expected of him as the season goes on. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, well, I had him in my fantasy league team. I was expecting him to be County's creator, but hasn't lived up to the expectations so far. So he was swiftly transferred out. But, it's a maybe tough prospect given the form of Ross County going into Sunday. Do you think they'll be looking forward to the international break after this week if things don't go according to plan on Sunday? If they were to come away from Pittodrie with a defeat, just give them an opportunity to regroup, maybe get some training and fitness into players that haven't obviously had this opportunity due to the COVID outbreak, and then kind of kick on afterwards.
I think it has to go down as an opportunity to kind of hit the reset button. They did that to a certain extent coming into the Rangers game, because that, although County had started the season, but then the fact they were out of the League Cup meant that they had a free weekend.
Okay.
Hibs and Rangers. So remember Malky saying after the Hibs game that this is an opportunity because of the COVID outbreak that you mentioned to get some kind of hard training sessions into them and almost, replicate the pre-season in that period. But after the game on Sunday, although there will be that kind of desire to really kick on with their season, I think they will have to look at it as an opportunity to finalise their squad, because the transfer window draws to in the midst of that period. So first and foremost, just settle everything they need to in terms of shaping their squad, and then just working on the shape and the real identity of their side going forward. It's Celtic that they go to in the next game, and then they've got Hearts at home. So a difficult couple of fixtures to start with, but I mean that's the way it is for County. They've been part of the top flight for a long time now. And years gone by, it's maybe not been as strong as this, and they've been in the top flight when some of the bigger clubs have been down. But I mean, this is what top flight normally looks like. So they just have to deal with that, and it can be difficult for those teams to string together any consistency. And that's where they need to be quite resilient, and knowing that if they do get beaten, by a couple of goals at Pittodrie on Sunday, and it's a difficult day for them at Parkhead coming up as well. They've got to be able to take that in their stride and show a response when it comes to the, perhaps more crunch head-to-head games that will ultimately determine where they finish.
Yeah, and I suppose, kind of looking maybe longer into the season, from a County point of view for Yandy, it's maybe the start might come back to hurt them. It's 7 goals conceded in the league in the last 2 games. Looking ahead to after the international break, Celtic currently, creating chances for fun. Aberdeen have been, playing some lovely football so far this season, and have punished teams at home as well. If County were to go on and lose those games heavily, do you think maybe defence is maybe an area that Malky's maybe looking to strengthen in, or is it just a case of they need more time on the training pitch?
One player that he brought in that's been really impressive so far is Harry Clark. He scored on Sunday, and he'd come on in the second half at Easter Road. Malky's been really impressed by the impact he's made. So I think he will probably slot in beside Alex Iacovitti, from going by the team that he picked on Sunday. He came in for Paul Donaldson. So it's whether he feels that there's more depth needed there. Keith Watson that dropped to the bench as well. The one position that they're short in is left back, because Jake Vokins was brought in on loan from Southampton and then picked up a metatarsal injury, metatarsal fracture, which I think is going to rule him out for the best part of 2-3 months. So I think they'll probably need to bring in something in that position, even on a short-term basis, going by the fact Ben Payton is a midfielder filled in that position on Sunday. But in terms of how they react to how Sunday's game goes, if it doesn't go their way, I don't think there will be anything knee-jerk, but it's clear that Malky is still intent on bringing in a couple of players, so it'll be more a depth thing, because I don't think he's too far away from the starting 11 that or having the options available for the starting 11 that he wants. It's more to do with getting them all up to speed and in tune with the type of team that he wants to put out in the park.
Yeah, well, Andy, it's a pleasure chatting to you this morning, and getting your perspective on County's season so far, and kind of thoughts ahead to the weekend, which possibly sounds like a daunting prospect for the Staggies. Hopefully, from an Aberdeen point of view, that will be encouraging way to react to whatever circumstance happens on Thursday night. And just thank you again for your time in coming on and sharing your thoughts on Ross County on Red Tinted Glasses.
Thanks very much for having me on, Glen. Enjoyed that, and nice to catch up with you again.
Yeah, pleasure. Well, that was the thoughts there of Andy Skinner on the game on Sunday. Hopefully, Calum, we're going to see a much improved performance, and hopefully you actually get into the game on Sunday.
I was going to say that. Hopefully I see any performance. That would be good. a bit of a nightmare. I can only apologise, but it's good to be back, good to be involved after my long time out for various reasons now, really, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And just once again, thanks to Fraser and Erin and also Andy for taking the time to help, add some content to this show. It's obviously something you guys had asked for from terms of an opposition. But from next week, it'll just be back to the two of us as we get ready before the international break. On Monday, we'll be speaking to Nikki Lowe for an interview that will be coming out during the international break. Kelly Forrest interview also out next week ahead of the international break and the women's league season starting a week on Sunday. So Calum will definitely be busy this weekend with a lot of editing if he doesn't get into the game. And the Red Tinted Glasses Fantasy League continues with the opportunity to win the Pittodrie print. For those of you watching on YouTube, that will see that. Johnny Curry and Lewis Adamson currently joint leaders on 214 points. So all to play for as we go into this weekend. So just want to say thanks again for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe. We got to 600, Calum.
I know. In my absence, the replacements served us very well. Thank you very much to each and every single one of them, and thank you for everyone who subscribed. As Glen's saying, don't forget, press that big red button, leave a like on the video, comment with your thoughts, and follow us wherever as well, wherever you're listening, and on Twitter at @RTG_podcast. And remembering, I've got a question though, Glen, that maybe people are thinking about now that you've mentioned it. What happens if there's a joint winner? We didn't think of that, did we?
We'll come up with something. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
We'll have to. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks for having me back, Glen. And hope you enjoyed it. Here's hoping for a positive podcast to discuss the Ross County gaming.